Sunday before last, I had a great opportunity to spend several days in Washington, D.C. with 16 lovely youth, working in the heat and humidity of Washington, and then spending the rest of the hours walking 6-7 miles a day, it seemed like. And the kids did super good. They were really working very hard on that mission trip up there, so that was good. And then we got in 1 o'clock, I think, on Friday, and then actually Saturday morning. And that Sunday, I went to our sister church. Who knows we have a sister church? Especially those who are in the 8:30 service know that? And where is this sister church located? A lake? Anyone in particular? Possum Kingdom Lake, that's right. We have a sister church that Earl Gant is responsible for starting out there. He loved spending his times out there, and Carol. But you know how that feels when you get out somewhere, you start feeling guilty. You may feel guilty for not going to church because you're having fun, right? And so anyway, he thought, well, I'm just going to start a church. So they meet down on the dock. And so now we're trying to do is twice a month, if we can work it out that way, we send a staff person down there to kind of change things up and preach a little bit. It was me last Sunday. This is Joanne this Sunday. And so if you wonder where she is, she was preaching the word at 9:30 this morning and sharing her faith with the fine people on the dock. And so I think what we're trying to do is the next one, we're trying to get a sign-up sheet for anybody who wants to go and participate in that worship. It's really a neat opportunity. It's very informal, obviously. And so you go there and you spend time talking and preaching, and we break bread together, and then we have breakfast. And so Larry's the cook out there, so we have a big breakfast of eggs and bacon and all sorts of stuff. So it's a real meaningful time, and a lot of good things are going down there. So we can invite you to do that. Meanwhile, here back in the town of Weatherford, here we are, gearing up again and getting through the summer. And we're continuing our time together, talking about how in the world we can create this Jesus culture by really looking closely at how Jesus loved, and then taking some time to kind of really emphasize the things that he did and then expects his followers to do. I guess expect is kind of a weak word. It's more of a command. If you're going to follow me, you've got to love this way because you're going to represent me in the world, right? And so if we stop and say, well, that's kind of hard teachings, I don't think I want to do that, then we need to kind of get over that. And we need to step up a little bit and see ourselves more as very important agents of God in the world, because the world is looking for what God has to offer, what Christ came to offer, and the only people that they will see are people like you and me. So how we represent God's love in the world is very, very critical in how we reach out to that. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Actually, we're going to talk a little bit about praying, not just praying for enemies or trying not to seek revenge. We're going to talk about the why. Why is that important, right? Anybody have a parent that used to tell them what to do all the time? Was anybody that parent that always told the kids what to do all the time? And if you're like me, when my dad in particular, would tell me to go do something, my response was, why? Why? His response was, man, y'all are awesome. I want to ask you to recite the Lord's Prayer. You don't have a clue what that is, but I can tell you what my parents said whenever they told me to do something, right? And so, yeah, that was always something that says, because I said so. How many of you were satisfied with that answer? You know, I'm now clear about my role in this life. It's because we'll do whatever my dad tells me to do because he said so, right? And so here is Jesus barking out all these commands. And so we do them because Jesus said so. So we're talking about why it is important for us to do the very things that he is asking us to do, especially when it comes to praying for our enemies and not seeking revenge. Anybody love their enemies? Honesty is good. Honesty is good. How many people say, I wish that person would just... fill in the blanks. Or how often do you say, you know what they're doing to me and saying to me, I can't take that personally. So I'm just going to step back. I'm going to pray for that person because I know they're struggling with something. I just happen to be the latest person that they can take it out on. So I'm going to try to lift them up and not take it personally or seek revenge or do those types of things. How many people have mastered that? Valerie, well, come preach it, sister. I'm going to sit right. Oh, no. You mastered it. You didn't try. You're mastering it, sister. Well, good for Valerie. Good for Valerie. Get your poster up in the foyer. Yeah, it does take a lot of practice. But that is part of who we are. And a lot of times we do in this life is we take everything so personally. And we don't know what other person's going through. And a lot of times when things get taken out on us, it has nothing to do with us. It has everything to do with that person. And so those are one of the reasons we got to do that. But also it's very important even in the life of the church that we learn how to resolve a lot of the issues or conflict that takes place. Because that's just the way that we're created to do that. Because if we don't do it, if we don't have healthy relationships, if we don't learn how to have healthy relationships, when relationships get off center or their conflict resolved, who's going to do it? Exactly. No one's going to do it, right? And that is the whole point about being a part of the faith or being a part of the church or being a Christian, is that we are the ones who have to do the hard things in this world. We are the ones. We just can't sit around and wait for somebody else to do it. Or I can't do it because I can't change because this is just the way I am. Doesn't work that way. If we believe that we are made in the image of God, we can do the very things that God imagines us to do. Period. Okay? No excuses, just a lot of hard work, a lot of determination to do that. So, I'll tell you how weird I am. As if I got to tell you, right? Here's the deal. I've been really trying to get into this Jesus figure. You know who? You know what I'm talking about? That Jesus guy, he's the guy in the Bible. And so I always thought, if we're supposed to be followers of this Jesus, it kind of seems silly that we don't even know who he is or what he taught or what he hopes what we do or expects us to do. So I'm just kind of the last, year, 2 years, 3 years, just focusing on what he taught. And so one thing that always stood out to me when I read his stories was he always had a crowd around him. Y'all notice that? If you don't, you need to look at those stories. He was always around people. Actually, people were always around him. He would try to get away from them, but you know what? They would follow him everywhere he went. They gathered around him all the time, everywhere. Why? Why was he so popular? What's the big deal? What did he have that their local synagogue or church didn't have? What were people seeking that they discovered in Jesus and not their church? What caused this crowd of people to get out of bed, to follow him, to disrupt their daily schedule, to miss meals even? What caused them to even skip the Sunday pregame football program and noon kickoffs? What? Even that. What caused them to seek them and just want to be in his presence? Have you ever thought about that? What was it about this guy? I kind of think we've gotten cynical about church a lot of times. I think sometimes our view of church is that we don't want it to be big. We don't want the crowds, right? Because there's a word we use that's a bad word to describe churches with crowds. What's the word? Mega church. Okay, we don't want mega church. We don't want the crowds. We don't want all those people seeking Christ and trying to hear what he has to say. We kind of get cynical about that. because we have this negative connotations about mega churches. And we roll our eyes and we think it's bogus and they're doing everything wrong, even though we have no clue what they do. But what if we had a business and we couldn't keep the crowds away? What if you owned a restaurant and there's a line outside the door for miles of people waiting to get in to get something to eat? Would we say, I don't want these people here. All they want to do is feed and eat. Would we say that's a bad thing? Or would we say that's a great problem to have? Church is no different. Jesus has something about him, about his message, about what he did and why he did it and how he did it that attracted the crowds. How many crowds did he attract? Well, the word crowd describes Jesus 147 times in the Gospels. Okay, that's a lot, all right? If you even look at how many times he prayed, you won't even see, get close to that. How many times he talked about salvation? Not even close. But you'll see 147 times in the Gospel, there's just crowds of people all around him. Why did they follow him? Why did they seek him out? Why would they move from place to place to place to see what he would do next, to see what they would say next, to reveal what would be next in line? Why would they do that? Have you ever thought about that? Or am I the only weird one in this church? Don't answer that. What I want you to do is I want to challenge you just to pick one of the four Gospels. And I want you to just kind of go through it and just kind of see the crowds. And I want you to ask yourself a question, start writing down your answers. What made Jesus so popular? What was it? Was it his hymn selection, you think? How he wore the robe? He didn't ask for offering? There had to be some gimmick. Got a loaf of bread at the end of the service? What was it that made him so popular? Certainly wasn't an entertainment business, was he? So read one gospel and come up with your answers. For now, you get to hear my answers, okay? Because I've been looking at this stuff for a lot of years, and I came up with four things that made Jesus so incredibly popular. Now, I'll say popularity not because everyone just thought he was the greatest thing since sliced bread or communion bread. I'm saying popular in the sense of he got people's attention, negatively as well. You know how the story ends, right? He was very popular even on the cross. That led to that cross. So I'm talking about four things today. And we'll see where this kind of leads. What made Jesus so popular? First thing I think, if you see Jesus and not see all the ways he got in trouble, is that he treated all people with respect. What's the key word in here? Good people, all. That is the biggest word in the vocabulary right there. Because what does all mean? Does it mean everyone? What about the people with the asterisk next to them that we don't like? Huh? Those two? Seriously? So he treated all people with respect. How did the church family respond to that one? You can keep that under your breath because we kind of know the story, right? We know the story. The hardest word to recognize is the word all because that means pretty much all. He treated everyone with respect. How many times have we even read in those gospel stories, why is he eating with those sinners and those tax collectors and all those hussies and things like that? Why is he out there doing all that stuff? Does he just want to be one of them? He ate, he treated all people with respect, period. He didn't draw lines in the sand. Not when it came to loving people. But he didn't just do that just for the sake of doing that. He did that for a reason. He wanted everyone to reach a very clear understanding that no matter where you have come from in your life, no matter what you are currently doing in your life, no matter what your dreams or passions may be down the road, they were important to God. How often do you allow that message to resonate in your soul? You are important to God. You have the potential, every one of us, to elevate your life to become what God created you to be. Jesus doesn't want any of us where we are today, but he accepts us where we are today because he sees that we can be greater things with our lives. And if we don't believe it, then it doesn't matter, does it? Because this is what he came to do, is to share people all this message of love, of hope, of unconditional love, of unfailing grace. That if you can come to believe in yourself the way that God believes in you, what you can accomplish is off the charts. But you got to get there. You have got to get there. And he was very adamant that even those people who were on the side of the road who were begging for food and couldn't see or couldn't walk or couldn't do things for themselves, he still sat with them and told them how important they were to God and what potential they had to elevate their life and become what God created them to be. Positive message, isn't it? Sure beats being told what you can't do all the time. Jesus had a way of saying what you can do. It's even greater than what we imagine. Second thing he did, which I think is brilliant, so he gets my star, in case you're wondering. His number one priority coming straight out of the gate to start his ministry was what? To serve those who are on the fringe of society. Luke 4 talks a lot about that. In fact, the church got so mad at him, what they try to do? Throw him off the cliff and kill him. That wasn't a good sermon. Maybe it was. I hope we don't practice that one. But one thing he did was that he made it his priority coming out of the gate that we're going to take care of those on the fringe of society. That was a very difficult thing for people to process. And he was very upfront about his purpose in life. And the number of people who have not been introduced to the grace of God outnumber those of us who are in the church 9 to 1. Okay? For every one of them, wait, I said it backwards, didn't I? For every one of us who feel like we're safe in the hands of Jesus, there's 9 folks who have no clue what it means to live in grace. 0. That's the greatest difference in the society we live in today. So it's not like we don't have any work to do. We just have to figure out how to be a part of what God is, or Jesus is trying to do and make his priority our priority, because that's the big thing. We have to make that. The third thing he did was that it's starting to heat up a little bit now. He began to speak very openly about what God expects people of God to do. Very openly. You want to be my follower, you are going to have to love the way that our God loves. That is not debatable. It's not something we poll the congregation and take a vote. This is something that we are commanded to do by the Son of God of the Most High. This comes down straight to us. We are supposed to be an image of extending unfailing grace and unconditional love to the world, period. We have to grow in that area. So if you're not really quite sure how you should treat someone that you don't agree with, whose lifestyle may feel uncomfortable to you, err on the side of unfailing grace and unconditional love. Try that. it not only will change that person's life, but it'll help you understand how God is using you even more. Okay? That is something that is not debatable. And Jesus was very open about that. In fact, he was having a crowd of people. He just turned around that crowd and said, hey, start telling them what they needed to do. You know what the crowd did with this one story? Hey, man, those teachings are tough. I got to overcome all my issues. I got to love people I've been told my whole life I'm not supposed to love. What if they take advantage of my love? So what did they do? They turned around and they walked off. Did Jesus run back and say, oh, no, wait. We need church members. Please stay. Let them go. They're not ready now. We'll have to wait until they're ready to take on those challenges. So we are here to represent unfailing grace, unconditional love. It's not something we should outthink. It is not something we should pretend that we're smarter than God. I really don't know what God's doing because I have deeper feelings. It's simply to extend unfailing grace and unconditional love. It is not an option for those of us who say, I want to follow Jesus. We have to grow in that area. If you don't think it's true, if you're not unsure that you can do that, then you are in the very right place because we have a way to help mature your faith to the point where you can begin to expand that image of God in your life and begin to offer unfailing grace and unconditional love. Okay? Am I clear on that one? Number 4. Here's the tough one. This is what really got him put on the cross right here. He confronted those within the church who did not live up to the expectations given to them by God. Very adamant about that. Very, very adamant about that. God's people were not reflecting God's love in the way that they were supposed to. Too many followers of Christ, too many followers of God, even throughout the generations of people, were more interested in doing things their way, the way that they felt comfortable, the way that brought them great memories, and not concerned about doing things God's way. This became a very sore spot that Jesus had to confront, and we know how that ended up, right? And this isn't new. You know, throughout the course of history of Christianity, or even the Jewish faith for that matter, there's always been those pockets of time, always been those times in history where there always seems to be this major disconnection between what Jesus did that made him popular and caused crowds to seek him out and find energy and hope for their lives, and what the church is doing or has done in the past that became an unpopular place to be and an underwhelming place. And from what I've learned, to make that connection, it all boils down to doing those simple 4 things that made Jesus popular. If the church can go back and recapture this magic, then people will see miracles again taking place all over this world. Easy to do? I'm going to assume the silence means no. Let's look at the third one real quick. You see how quick that happened? Thank you. This is a big one. God's expectations to love all people is given to those who follow. And this is a hard transition to make, I think, for the church, because we've become kind of the last 60, 70 years more of a business and less of a mission post for Christ, right? We hire these people to do the work of the church for us. And we sit back and we let them do it because we have our own busy lives to do. And that's a hard habit to break out of. And so what ends up happening is that then we start thinking as shareholders, right, that we've got to decide if the minister is growing our church or not. And it's a very difficult thing to be able to break out of, to have this understanding that, I am just a person on staff who happens to be a minister who is called by God, that my calling is not to do things for you. My calling is to equip you, empower you to understand that God is calling you to do great things. So in reality, you're the ministers. And we all have gifts that we can share. We all have things that we can do to make life better for other people. We all have them. And we also have a very limited time to do that. Am I right? But doesn't mean you got to come up here 40 hours a week. Or 3 like the rest of us, because we only work on Sundays. Right? But that does mean that there's something very special and very valuable about what you have and what God has given you with your passions and your gifts, that you can make a difference with the time that you have allotted for what you can do. But it always goes to participating in serving the people that Jesus came to serve. Does that make sense? I had a conversation with a lady who said one time, well, my ministry is to mow my parents' yards because they're not capable of doing that. Terrific. That's your responsibility as a child. Your ministry is to help people outside of yourself whose needs are a lot greater than our needs are ever will be. We have to connect with those who are on the fringe, just like Jesus were on the fringe, dealt with them. You never read anywhere Jesus went out and mowed his mother's lawn, right? You can look at it. I promise you can Google it if you want to Google it right now. It never happened. It might be our responsibility, but our ministry is to serve people who need to be served, who are crying out to God, and we respond to that. So he always spoke the truth about God's expectations to love. And that also means that we have to learn how to get along with each other. Because here's the way to create unity within the life of the church. If you make your focus Christ-focused by we gathering together to point our ways toward those on the fringe, and we gather all of our gifts and abilities, and we're focusing on what Jesus focused on. We're busy looking at this instead of looking at one another. We're more busy trying to figure out how we can help people who are in need, which outnumbers 9-1, instead of trying to figure out what other people are doing that we don't like, or what hymns are more important to me than others. Because the more we look at Jesus' ministry and what we're called to do, the less we worry about what we want. And we more focus on what God needs us to do, and we have the equipment to do that with our gifts and passions to do that. So conflict and resolving conflict is very important. So let's look at that one scripture that we shared. Actually, this is the first time we've seen. If you read this, this is kind of interesting, because this is what Jesus wrote, or is in the Gospels. But the trick is this. This was written in Matthew's Gospel around the year 90, when the church was really getting to start. When Jesus was around and doing ministry, there was no word for church, right? So if Jesus is saying that a member of your church sins against you, that's kind of a tricky thing because there wasn't a church at that point. So what Matthew is doing is taking the ethics and the teachings of Jesus and bringing it to his church family so that they can understand what it is that Jesus is trying to get this group of family to do. And so we talk about with conflict, it all starts with this. And I've said this 100 times to a lot of people. I would much rather you talk to me than talk about me. You get that? Do you know the difference? If you talk about me to somebody else, it better be to see how you can help to figure out how to resolve whatever conflict that needs to take place. Because if there's conflict in the unity of the body of Christ, there's no way we can go out into the world and create unity, can we? Yeah. That's mayhem right there. And that causes decline in church, right? Because if the church is chaos, and just a few bunch of people are running the show, and they're always angry at people, I can get that at home. Well, I don't want to come here and get that. I can go to work and get that. So yeah, we got to do the hard stuff by learning how to resolve what conflict or issues we have. And it's always face to face. If you have an issue with me, talk to me. If I have an issue with you, I'll talk to you. And if we can't, then we start involving more mature people of faith to help us work through all that stuff until unity has arrived. And then when that happens, then great things can happen again. And I'm going to tell you what. This is sermon number 2 starting now. This is what this means to me. See this? This table. And even this offering plate. Because this is saying to us that all of our gifts are so important to God. And as different and as many as they are in this place, if we can come together and focus on the life and the ministry of Jesus Christ and share our portion of who we are, what God created us to be, then there's no telling what God can do through us. And so every time we gather around in this place and we partake in this communion, this is what we're proclaiming. That I am laying aside my differences. I am focusing on what God needs me to do with our life. I am going to seek those who are on the fringe and find my ministry within the life of the church so that we can make a difference in the world. And that's what we need to do together. And that is why we take communion together at the end of worship. It's where we're empowered and then go out and to serve. Capiche? Is that a word? Is that not a word? It is French? Smarter than I know. Okay? So we're going to prepare for that. We're going to prepare for our time of communion to share. And everyone is obviously welcome to this table. We're going to share our gifts of ministry that we can continue to be an impact on the world around us. So let us pray together. We are thankful, God, that you call us into doing many wonderful things in this life through your empowerment. It is when we break off and try to do our own things, oh Lord, that we kind of make a mess of our lives and a mess of life itself. So help us stay focused on who we are, what you call us to be. Help us to rely on the Spirit that calls us and brings us out, empowers us to be your people. Guide us in all the things that we say and do. Touch our motivations, that we can seek the things that you sought and believe in the way that you taught, that we can become instruments of your love and your peace. Take away all those things that we say that we cannot do or won't do and turn them into possibilities, which will then turn them into energy that seeks your kingdom. We're thankful for the people who have heard your call in your name, who have gathered in this place, who have found peace and grace here, and we also pray that you lift them up and empower them to do great things with their life, because this is what you call us to do. It's in Christ's name that we gather and that we give thanks, and that we break bread with your Son, Jesus Christ, who sees who we are and knows who we are as well. Guide us always, we pray. Amen.
My life is yours.